Dear friends, brothers, and sisters in Christ, I stand before you today, grateful for the wisdom that comes with age, the experience that life has granted us, and the grace we've received to walk this journey together. For those of us who have lived through many seasons, we know how precious this earth is, not just in its beauty, but in its fragility. It's a lesson that time has etched on our hearts. But if we're honest, the world around us feels a little different now, doesn't it? We see the effects of climate change, the pollution of our waters, the loss of forests, and the suffering of our neighbors. We hear the call from Pope Francis as he speaks of the earth as our common home, a home that we are tasked with caring for. And, as he so poignantly reminds us, if we destroy it, we have nowhere else to go. What does that really mean for us? What does it look like for us, especially those of us who have seen so much of the world change, to take this call to heart? How can we, at this stage in life, still make a difference? And why should we? I want to start by acknowledging something that is clear to all of us. The clock is ticking. We cannot ignore the environmental crises before us, and neither can we ignore the responsibility we have, not just to our own generation, but to the generations that will come after us. We've been given so much, and it's now our turn to give back. This isn't just about saving trees or recycling plastic, though those are important. This is about something much deeper. It's about living in a way that honors God's creation. It's about having compassion for the world He made and for the people who share this home with us. It's about recognizing that when we care for the earth, we're also caring for one another. You see, Pope Francis's words are not just about protecting the environment. They're a call to live with compassion. Compassion not only for the earth, but for the people who are suffering because of the destruction of our planet. Compassion for those whose lives have been torn apart by environmental disasters. Compassion for the poor, the elderly, the children, for all of God's creation that depends on us to be good stewards. And today, I want to invite you into a conversation that's as urgent as it is inspiring. The call to care for our common home is one that requires all of us, no matter our age or experience. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can answer the call to be the hands and feet of God's love, not just in our communities, but for the very earth we call home. So, my dear friends, I ask you, are we willing to answer that call? Are we ready to embrace the challenge of living with compassion for both our neighbors and our planet? Because, as Pope Francis says, if we destroy our common home, there truly is nowhere else to go. Let us reflect on that together, and may God guide us as we begin this journey toward deeper compassion and stewardship of His world. Let's begin. 1. The power of compassion. A universal call. Beloved friends, let us pause for a moment and reflect on what it means to be compassionate. Compassion is not just a feeling, it is an action. It is a deep internal stirring that moves us to respond to the needs of others. Jesus taught us this truth in the parable of the Good Samaritan. In that story, we encounter a man who is wounded and in need of help, lying by the side of the road. While others pass by, a compassionate Samaritan stops, binds the man's wounds, and ensures he is cared for. What strikes us in this parable is not just that the Samaritan felt pity for the man, but that he acted on his compassion. He did something. Pope Francis calls us to live with this kind of compassion, not just towards our fellow human beings, but towards the earth itself, toward all of creation. Compassion is not limited to human suffering alone. It extends to the suffering of the world around us. When we look at our planet and witness the ravages of climate change, deforestation, and pollution, we see the earth itself wounded. We see creation groaning under the weight of human neglect, and it calls out for our help. As people who have walked with Christ for many years, we know the importance of loving our neighbors as ourselves. But do we understand that this extends to the earth too? The compassion we show to the least among us, the poor, the sick, the marginalized, should also extend to our environment. When we care for the earth, we are, in essence, caring for our neighbors, because the state of our planet directly affects the poorest and most vulnerable. Our God, who created this world, saw that it was good, but He also entrusted us with its care. As stewards, we are responsible not only for the people around us, but for all that God has made. Compassion, in its truest form, is about recognizing the interconnection between us, the people, and the planet. It is about understanding that all of God's creation is sacred, and it is a sacred responsibility to care for it. In the words of Pope Francis, the earth, our home, is beginning to look more and more like an immense pile of filth. These words are harsh, yes, but they are meant to wake us up, to recognize the deep, pressing need to act. We are all called to be compassionate caretakers of this world, to be a light in the darkness. Compassion is a call to action, one that moves us to act on behalf of those who cannot speak for themselves, whether they are the poor, the animals, or the environment that sustains us all. So, let us ask ourselves, how is our compassion showing up in the world? How are we responding to the suffering of the earth? Let us take this moment to reflect on our hearts and our actions. May we have the courage to not just feel compassion, but to live compassion. 2. Understanding our common home. What does it mean? Now, let us turn to the words of Pope Francis as he calls us to care for our common home. The phrase may seem simple, but it is packed with meaning. What does it really mean to have a common home? This idea goes beyond the notion of a house or a place to live. It refers to the world we all share, the earth upon which we all depend. It's the soil beneath our feet, the air we breathe, the water we drink. Our common home is not just a piece of land. It is the sacred ground that sustains life. For many of us, the earth has been a source of comfort and joy. Perhaps you've spent years in your garden, watched the seasons change, or taken long walks through the woods. Maybe you've seen the beauty of a sunset over the mountains, or felt the calm of the ocean breeze. These experiences are a gift, but they are also a responsibility. Our world is not ours to exploit and discard. It is ours to care for, as stewards entrusted with its well-being. Pope Francis, in his landmark encyclical Laudato Si, reminds us that the earth is not just a resource to be used, but a gift from God that we must cherish. He speaks of the common good, a term that calls us to think beyond our personal interests and consider the welfare of all. The earth belongs to everyone, and its care is a shared responsibility. It is not a question of what we can take from the earth, but rather what we can give back to it. If we look at creation with the eyes of faith, we begin to see the deep interconnectedness of all things. Our actions do not occur in isolation. When we harm the environment, we harm ourselves. And when we care for the earth, we are caring for our brothers and sisters. Pope Francis invites us to see the earth as a web of life, where each of us is connected to the other and to all of creation. Our common home is not just a beautiful planet. It is a place of shared responsibility. We are called to live in harmony with nature, to recognize the dignity of every creature, and to ensure that future generations will inherit a world that is sustainable, healthy, and full of life. The land, the oceans, the forests, the animals, the air, all of it belongs to God, and He has entrusted us with the sacred duty to protect it. 3. Pope Francis's vision of environmental stewardship. Brothers and sisters, I want to take a moment to reflect on Pope Francis's powerful vision for environmental stewardship. For him, caring for the earth is not just an environmental issue, it is a deeply spiritual one. It is a moral obligation, one rooted in our faith and in our love for God's creation. In his encyclical Laudato Si, Pope Francis writes, "The creation accounts in the Bible show us that the universe is God's handiwork, and that He created it for all to enjoy." These words remind us that the earth is not simply a backdrop for our lives. It is a gift from God, given to us for our enjoyment and for the well-being of all creation. It is not to be taken for granted, and it is not to be exploited for selfish gain. Environmental stewardship, according to Pope Francis, is not a new agenda or a passing trend. It is deeply rooted in our faith tradition. From the very beginning, God gave humanity dominion over the earth, but that dominion was not about domination or exploitation. It was about responsible stewardship, a care and respect for the world God made. In the book of Genesis, we are told to tend and keep the garden of the earth, to care for it as we would care for anything precious. Yet, too often, we have forgotten this responsibility. We have used the earth's resources as though they were ours to do with as we please. We have polluted its rivers, cleared its forests, and destroyed its wildlife. And in doing so, we have harmed not only the planet, but ourselves and our neighbors. Pope Francis's call for a culture of care is a call for us to rethink the way we live. He urges us to build a new relationship with creation, one based on respect, reverence, and love. A culture of care involves recognizing that all life is interconnected. What we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. What we do to the poorest and most vulnerable, we do to the earth. When we look at the environmental crises facing us today, from deforestation to climate change to pollution, we see that they are not just problems of science or politics. They are moral issues. They are issues of justice. As Pope Francis has said, the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor are one and the same. We are called to respond to these cries with compassion, to take action, not just in our communities, but in our hearts. We are called to recognize that environmental degradation and social injustice are inseparable. The choices we make today will determine the world we leave for future generations. So, let us reflect on this. What does it mean to live as stewards of God's creation? How can we, in our daily lives, embrace this vision of care and responsibility for the earth? The time to act is now, and together, with God's guidance, we can make a difference. Let us begin today to live as compassionate caretakers of our common home. 4. The spiritual dimension of environmentalism. My beloved brothers and sisters, I want to take a moment to speak about the spiritual dimension of environmental stewardship. Caring for the earth is not just an environmental issue, it is fundamentally a spiritual one. In our faith, we are taught that the earth is God's creation, and we are entrusted with its care. This is not merely a social or political responsibility, it is a divine calling. The scriptures tell us in the book of Genesis that when God created the heavens and the earth, he declared it to be good. Genesis 1:31. He looked upon his creation, and it was good. And when he created humanity, he entrusted us with the care of his creation. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to till it and keep it. Genesis 2:15. This was not a temporary job assignment. It was a calling, one that continues to this very day. As Christians, we are called not only to love one another, but to love the world God has made. We cannot love the Creator without loving His creation. The beauty of the trees, the majesty of the mountains, the serenity of the seas, all of these reflect the greatness of God. When we destroy or harm the environment, we are not just harming nature, we are dishonoring the Creator. Think of it this way. When we care for the earth, we are also cultivating a deeper relationship with God. We begin to see His handiwork in every leaf, every cloud, every drop of rain. Creation becomes a mirror of the divine, revealing God's power, wisdom, and love. And when we care for it, we are honoring God's presence in all things. The spiritual practice of caring for the earth is also about cultivating gratitude. How often do we take for granted the beauty and abundance of our world? In our busy lives, we forget to stop and thank God for the sun that rises each day, for the food we eat, for the air we breathe. When we take the time to appreciate creation, we are practicing a kind of spiritual mindfulness, recognizing that the earth itself is a gift from God. The Psalms remind us of this truth. Psalm 24:1 says, "The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell therein." When we remember that the earth belongs to God, it shifts our perspective. We are caretakers, not owners. And when we live with this truth in mind, we begin to see that our actions have consequences. not just for ourselves, but for the world around us. Our faith calls us to treat the earth with reverence, to respect its beauty and its boundaries. It calls us to live in harmony with nature, recognizing that we are part of the created order, not separate from it. This is the essence of spiritual environmentalism, living in a way that reflects God's love for His creation. Let us reflect on this together. How can we, in our everyday lives, cultivate a deeper sense of spiritual responsibility for the earth? Perhaps it is as simple as taking a walk in nature and thanking God for the beauty we see. Perhaps it is choosing to reduce waste or use fewer resources. Whatever it may be, let us strive to live with an awareness that everything we do impacts the world God has entrusted to us. 5. The intersection of social justice and environmental justice. Dear friends, I want us to reflect on a powerful truth that Pope Francis has repeatedly emphasized: the link between environmental justice and social justice. These two issues are not separate. They are intricately connected. When we harm the environment, we harm people, particularly the poor, the vulnerable, and the marginalized. The Earth's suffering is not an abstract concept. It manifests in real human suffering. The truth is, the effects of environmental degradation are not felt equally. The poorest among us are often the most affected by climate change, deforestation, and pollution. It is the communities that live closest to toxic waste sites, the families that rely on fishing for their livelihood, and the indigenous peoples whose lands are being destroyed for profit. These are the people who suffer the most. Pope Francis speaks of this injustice in Laudato Si, noting that the poor are disproportionately affected by environmental damage. As Christians, we are called to care for the least of these. Jesus himself identified with the poor and the oppressed. In Matthew 25:40, he says, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." When we stand up for the environment, we are standing up for those who have no voice in the global conversation about climate change, pollution, and resource depletion. Think of it in practical terms. When we destroy a forest, we are not just harming the animals that live there. We are also hurting the people whose homes depend on those resources. When we pollute the air, we are not just affecting the environment. We are damaging the health of families who live in polluted areas, often communities that already face poverty and poor access to health care. This is where our Christian faith calls us to action. We must recognize that environmental justice is not a luxury or a side issue. It is at the heart of our moral duty to care for the poor and marginalized. When we fight for the earth, we fight for the dignity of every person. We are called to seek the common good, to ensure that the benefits of a healthy planet are shared equally among all people, especially those who have been left behind. Our faith teaches us that we cannot ignore injustice, whether it is environmental or social. Just as Jesus stood against the injustices of his time, we too are called to stand against the environmental injustices of our time. We must fight for policies that protect the earth and the vulnerable, and we must make personal choices that reflect our commitment to both social and environmental justice. So, let us ask ourselves, are we willing to stand in solidarity with the poor and the oppressed in the fight for a healthier, more just planet? Are we ready to take responsibility for our actions, knowing that they have far-reaching consequences for the most vulnerable among us? 6. The current crisis. Why we need to listen. Now, brothers and sisters, as we consider these important truths, let us take a hard look at the reality of the environmental crisis we are facing. It is not an abstract issue. It is not something that can be ignored any longer. The crisis is here. The time to act is now. The effects of climate change are becoming more and more evident. We are seeing more frequent and severe storms, rising sea levels, droughts that devastate crops, and wildfires that ravage communities. Entire ecosystems are being destroyed, and species are disappearing at an alarming rate. These are not just statistics. These are lives being affected, both human and animal. Our world is changing, and it is changing quickly. Yet, as Pope Francis warns, we cannot afford to ignore this crisis. The longer we wait, the more difficult and costly it will be to reverse the damage we've done. In Laudato Si, he writes, The earth has been gravely harmed by the evil use of human beings, and we are at a critical moment in history. We are facing a crossroads, and what we choose to do in the coming years will determine the future of the planet. The truth is, the current crisis affects us all, but it is those who are already suffering the most who will feel its impact first and hardest. The poor, the elderly, the vulnerable. They have the least capacity to adapt to the changes we are witnessing. We cannot turn a blind eye to this suffering. As people of faith, we must respond with compassion and urgency. Now is the time to listen. Now is the time to act. Pope Francis calls us to an ecological conversion, a change of heart that leads to concrete actions. It is not enough to simply acknowledge the problem. We must take steps to change our behavior, our habits, and our systems. We must embrace a lifestyle that honors the earth and respects the dignity of every person. Brothers and sisters, the hour is late, but there is still hope. As long as we are breathing, there is still time to make a difference. Let us heed the call to care for our common home, and let us act with the urgency and compassion that our faith demands. The time to care for the earth is now. Let us not wait until it is too late. 7. Practical ways we can care for our common home. Dear friends, as we reflect on the call to care for our common home, it's important that we understand what this looks like in our daily lives. It's one thing to feel moved by the need to act, but it's another to know how we can begin making a tangible difference in the world around us. Caring for the environment is not just a grand ideal. It's something we can put into practice every day in our homes, our communities, and our workplaces. Let us begin with small, practical actions. In our homes, we can start by reducing waste. Many of us grew up in an era where recycling wasn't common practice, but today, we know the importance of recycling, composting, and reusing what we can. Each plastic bottle, each piece of cardboard, each scrap of food waste that we recycle, we are contributing to the restoration of the earth. It might seem like a small thing, but Pope Francis reminds us that every action counts. It is not enough to think of the earth as a thing to be exploited, he writes. The earth is a shared inheritance, whose fruits are meant to benefit everyone. Beyond recycling, we can look at our energy consumption. As many of us continue to enjoy the comfort of electricity and heat in our homes, we can be mindful of the energy we use. Small changes, like turning off lights when we leave a room, using energy-efficient appliances, or reducing our use of air conditioning and heating, can make a big difference over time. These actions not only conserve resources, but they also send a message about our commitment to being stewards of the earth. Additionally, consider how we travel. While it might not be feasible for everyone to switch to electric vehicles right away, there are other options we can explore. Perhaps it's choosing to carpool, taking public transportation, or even walking or biking more often. These small decisions help reduce the pollution we put into the atmosphere and ease the burden on our planet. As we care for the environment, we can also support sustainable practices in the products we buy. Whenever possible, choose locally sourced food. Support companies that are committed to ethical production methods, whether it's clothing made from organic materials or food grown without harmful pesticides. These small choices have a ripple effect. They help build a more sustainable economy and promote practices that are kind to the earth. And let us not forget the power of advocacy. While we can make a difference through our personal actions, we are also called to stand for justice in our communities and in the public sphere. Whether it's speaking out for policies that protect the environment or supporting organizations that work on behalf of those suffering due to environmental harm, our collective voice can make an impact. Pope Francis reminds us that the Church must engage in dialogue and collaboration to address ecological problems, and so too must we. These are just a few examples of how we can make practical, everyday changes that will benefit the environment. It's not about doing everything perfectly. It's about doing something, starting where we are, with what we have. If each of us takes even small steps, the collective impact will be profound. Let us begin today, in whatever way we can, to live in harmony with the earth. Let us show God our gratitude for His creation by being faithful stewards, honoring the world He has made. 8. The role of community in environmental stewardship. Brothers and sisters, as we look at this call to care for our common home, it is clear that this is not something we can do alone. Pope Francis's message is one of solidarity, and he calls us to recognize that we are all part of a larger community. Environmental stewardship is not just an individual responsibility, it is a collective one. We are called to come together in unity, to support one another as we take care of our world. In our communities, we can begin to encourage others to adopt more sustainable practices, just as we have. Think of the impact that could be made if every person in our church, every neighbor, every member of our family, made a commitment to live more mindfully with the earth. Together, we could create a ripple effect of positive change. There is power in community. When we come together, we can achieve much more than we could on our own. We can support local environmental initiatives, plant trees in our neighborhoods, organize cleanup efforts at local parks, or work with schools to teach young people about the importance of caring for the earth. These actions are not just about taking care of the earth. They are about building relationships, strengthening our bonds, and growing in love for one another. When we take responsibility for our common home as a community, we also become witnesses to the world of the deep love and concern that we, as Christians, have for all of creation. Our actions speak louder than our words. By working together, we make it clear that the care of the earth is a spiritual duty, one that transcends political boundaries, economic interests, or personal agendas. It is a duty rooted in our faith, a faith that calls us to love not only our neighbors but also the world God has entrusted to us. Let us remember that when we come together, we are not just advocating for environmental issues, we are advocating for justice. We are standing up for those who are most affected by environmental degradation, for the poor, the oppressed, and those who live in the margins. Just as Jesus reached out to the marginalized in society, we too are called to extend our hands to those who suffer due to environmental harm. Our efforts may seem small, but in unity, they become mighty. In community, we find strength. And in the body of Christ, we see that our work is part of a greater mission, a mission that seeks to restore all things to God's original design. 9. The hope of redemption, a vision for the future. My dear friends, as we reflect on the urgency of caring for our common home, we must also remember the incredible hope we have as Christians. The environmental challenges we face are daunting, and at times, they may seem overwhelming. It's easy to feel discouraged, to wonder if we can truly make a difference in the face of such an enormous crisis. But I want to remind you today that we are people of hope. Our faith is built upon the promise of redemption, of renewal and restoration. Just as God brought redemption to humanity through Christ, so too can He bring renewal to our planet. The message of the gospel is one of transformation, and this transformation extends beyond our hearts. It is a transformation of all creation. In Romans 8:22-23, Paul writes, "We know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth right up to the present time. Not only so, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for our adoption to sonship, the redemption of our bodies." The earth itself is groaning for redemption, for the fulfillment of God's promise to make all things new. This is the hope that we cling to. Even in the face of devastation, we know that God is at work, healing and restoring. And just as God uses His people to bring spiritual redemption, He also calls us to be agents of healing in the world. We are His hands and feet, called to work alongside Him in the restoration of all things. The environmental movement is not just about solving problems, it is about partnering with God in His redemptive work on earth. As we care for creation, we are participating in God's ongoing act of renewal. This hope should inspire us to act with greater urgency and greater faith. We may not see the full fruits of our labor today, but we trust that God is using our efforts for His glory and for the good of His creation. Even small acts of care, planting a tree, reducing our waste, advocating for policy change, are acts of hope. They are our way of participating in God's vision for a renewed and restored world. Friends, the environmental crisis is real, but it is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a new chapter, one where we as the people of God can make a difference. And while the road ahead may be challenging, we are not walking it alone. We have each other, and we have God's promise that He is with us, guiding us every step of the way. Let us take heart and continue the work God has entrusted to us, confident that His plan for restoration is unfolding. Let us be faithful stewards of the earth, knowing that in doing so, we are reflecting God's love for all of creation. Together, with faith and hope, we can rise to the challenge of caring for our common home. 10. The eternal significance of caring for creation. My dear friends, as we continue our journey of reflection on the stewardship of God's creation, we must remember that our efforts are not just about improving the state of the planet. They are about recognizing the eternal significance of our relationship with creation and with the Creator. Caring for the earth is not simply a temporal task. It is a deeply spiritual act, one that connects us to God and to each other in ways that transcend time and space. The great spiritual writers have long spoken about the sacredness of creation. Saint Francis of Assisi, whose feast day we celebrate each year, is perhaps the most well-known example of someone who saw the beauty and holiness in every part of nature. To him, the sun was brother sun, and the moon was sister moon. He recognized that all things, from the smallest insect to the tallest mountain, were part of the divine tapestry. Saint Francis' love for creation was an expression of his deep love for God, and in caring for the earth, he was honoring the Creator himself. In the same way, we are called to see creation as sacred. We must recognize that our relationship with the earth is not merely utilitarian, it is spiritual. Every tree, every river, every animal is a gift from God, and in caring for them, we are affirming our relationship with Him. We are, in a sense, mirroring God's own love for the world, which He created out of love and continues to sustain with His grace. In the Gospel of John, we are reminded that, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." John 1:1. And in this same Word, this Logos, we see the creation of all things. Through Jesus Christ, the Word became flesh, and it is in Him that we come to know the true purpose of creation. The universe, with all its beauty and complexity, was created through Christ and for Christ. Colossians 1:16 affirms this, saying, "For in Him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. All things have been created through Him and for Him." This is the heart of the Christian understanding of creation. It is made through Christ, and it is meant to bring glory to Christ. As we care for the earth, we are engaging in an act of worship. We are responding to God's love by showing our love for His creation. And we are fulfilling the mandate that was given to humanity in the Garden of Eden: to till and keep the garden, to be stewards of what God has entrusted to us. The implications of this truth are profound. It means that our environmental efforts are not just good deeds, they are acts of reverence. They are part of our vocation as Christians to glorify God in every area of our lives. As we care for creation, we are participating in the divine plan to restore all things to their intended purpose, and we are helping to prepare the world for the final restoration that will come when Christ returns. This is not a call to despair, nor is it a call to passive waiting. It is a call to action, to live out our faith with a renewed sense of purpose. When we work to care for the earth, we are not only alleviating immediate suffering, we are contributing to the eternal kingdom of God. As we work to heal the world, we are also preparing it for the fullness of God's reign, when He will make all things new. Revelation 21:1-5 speaks of this beautiful vision of restoration, where the old order of things has passed away, and God declares, "Behold, I am making everything new." This is the hope that we hold on to, the hope that our efforts, though small, are part of the larger story of redemption. They are part of God's plan to bring healing, not just to the earth, but to the whole of creation, including humanity. And this gives our work meaning. Every action, no matter how seemingly insignificant, has eternal significance. Conclusion. The call to action and hope for the future. Dear brothers and sisters, as we come to the end of this reflection, I want to leave you with a final message of hope and encouragement. We live in challenging times, and the environmental crises we face are real. But we are not without hope. As Christians, we are part of a larger divine narrative, one in which God's redemptive work continues through us, and through our actions, He is bringing restoration and healing to the world. Pope Francis, in his call for ecological conversion, invites us to look beyond the immediate challenges and to focus on the long-term vision of renewal. Caring for creation is not just about solving the problems of today, but about participating in God's ultimate plan for the world. When we act to protect the earth, we are contributing to the restoration of all things, to the fulfillment of God's promise that He will make all things new. But this task is not one that we can carry out alone. As a community, as the body of Christ, we are called to come together in solidarity. We are called to lift one another up, to share wisdom, to support one another in the small and large acts of care that will make a difference. Together we can create a ripple effect of change, one that reaches beyond our homes and churches, touching our communities, and ultimately, the world. So, my dear friends, let us answer the call with urgency and faith. Let us not wait for someone else to act. Let us begin today, with the simple, faithful steps that are within our reach. Let us be mindful of the resources we use, the way we treat the earth, and the way we treat one another. Let us speak up for those who are suffering from environmental injustice, and let us advocate for policies that protect both people and the planet. And as we do so, let us remember that we are not alone. God is with us in this work. He has entrusted us with His creation, and He will guide us as we strive to fulfill our calling. We have the promise of redemption, of renewal, of restoration, not only for ourselves, but for the whole of creation. May our hearts be filled with hope and our actions with love, as we work together to care for our common home, knowing that in doing so, we are fulfilling our vocation as stewards of God's good earth. And may we be ever mindful that, in all things, we are called to reflect the love, grace, and glory of our Creator. Amen.